Not in his worst nightmare could he have ever envisioned that he would end up here. If you could go back in time and make different decisions, he would do it in a heartbeat. But because of these decisions, his parents had turned their backs on him, and his friends wanted nothing to do with him. And how could he blame them? All he saw was disgust on their faces, and disgust when he looked at himself in the mirror. He knew what was in every person's mind as they passed him by each day. They were probably thinking, sell out. In fact, they had made a special classification for guys just like him. He really wasn't worthy to be thrown in with all the other sinners. But instead, guys like him were one step worse. They were tax collectors. Well, on this particular day, Matthew was sitting at his tax collection table when a crowd of people surrounded a man that was walking just a few yards away from him. So Matthew asked a few people that were standing nearby who that was, and they said it was a guy named Jesus from Nazareth, a man that Matthew had heard about, but he'd never really seen before. So Matthew kind of leans in and he tries to hear what this popular teacher was saying. But then a group of men interrupted Jesus mid-sentence, and they laid this paralyzed man right in front of him at his feet. And instead of being annoyed, Jesus immediately looked at the man, and he simply said, "Take heart, my son, your sins are forgiven." Now, Matthew was so shocked by those simple words that he instinctively laughed out loud. So loud that a number of people nearby turned and looked at him with this irritated glare. And Jesus looked too. So Matthew kind of slumps down in his chair, trying to hide. But Jesus, he just turned back to the man that was lying before him and said, "Just to show all of you that I can forgive sins." And he looked at the man and he said, "Get up and walk." And immediately the man stood up and started walking home. And the crowd, along with Matthew, just stood there amazed at what they just witnessed. Now, Matthew had never seen anything like this before. And when he looked again, he saw Jesus walking right towards his table. And if Matthew didn't know any better, the teacher was looking right at him. So Matthew looks over his shoulder just to make sure that nobody else was standing behind him that Jesus might have been coming to talk to. But Jesus stops at Matthew's table. He leans in and he whispers to Matthew, just loud enough for him to hear. And he says, "Follow me." And not knowing hardly anything about this Jesus, not knowing where he was going or what he was being called to himself or why in the world Jesus would have chosen him in the first place, Matthew found himself standing up and leaving his life of tax collecting behind. And somewhere in the deep part of his soul, he knew that this was the most important decision that he'd ever made. You know, here at the Milledgeville Brethren Church, we're starting a new series of studies that we're calling Made for Mission. And I believe that the invitation of Jesus that we're going to be studying for the next 6 weeks, I believe it has the potential to transform your life as never before. You see, I believe that God has a mission for your life and for mine. But each of us has to make our own decision as to how we'll respond. We can ignore it, just walk away from it, not pay any attention to it. Or we can kind of flirt with it, kind of like stepping our foot in the water to test the water, but then moving away after temporarily joining God in what he has made us to be. But we are called to live on mission, living out our lives in connection with how God made us and how he is already working. And that's what this series is going to be about. So I hope that you'll come and join us here at the Milledgeville Brethren Church on Sunday morning at 10 o'clock. We are regathering for our in-person worship. And if you can't make it here in person, we'll be live streaming the service as well. But I hope to see you then as we embark on this new journey called Made for Mission.